Hi, this is late, but this is my January wrap-up, and I have a reason for it being this late. It's because I have filmed this 7 times, and the video just kept on getting deleted, and I think I've solved the problem. Because I have filmed this so many times, I've already put away the books, and I've decided that I'm not going to tell you about everything I read. January was a weird reading month. That was a chaotic month. You're gonna see, because the scope of this book's, for me, just makes no sense. So the first thing I read, Marie Lu's Legendary series, which is a YA dystopian, originally in a trilogy, but the 4th book came out, I think it came out in 2019 actually, and this series came out in like 2013, 2012, like prime YA dystopia. I read this because I think Fairy Loot was doing like exclusive editions, and I was like, oh, you know, I remember those books, let me pick them up, maybe I'll like them. So I bought them for really cheap on Depop. I hated this series. Let me tell you why. It's sort of set in America, like 100 years from now, and the country has been split into 2 different countries. So on the East Coast is very commercialized versus the West Coast being a much more authoritarian. We have these 2 characters that the chapters rotate between. Day is this Robin Hood figure, goes around stealing from the government, blowing up planes, shit like that, you know what I'm saying? And June, she grew up in a military family. Again, it's a YA dystopian, so you can expect that turn the government, one of them almost dies, love, that's that. It was basically a really just half-assed copy and paste of the Hunger Games. I really don't understand how anyone could like the series besides like the nostalgia of it, maybe, of having read it back then. I hated Day, which is crazy because the book rotates between the 2 characters, so that means Day, he's half the story, right? But Day's impulsive and he acts with his emotions, and I felt that when we read his chapters, it was like getting a tunnel view of what was actually happening. Also, the ink for his pages are blue. I loved reading from June because she grew up trained, especially considered a protege. She was very observant, and when we read her chapters, we saw a whole room, we saw every detail, nothing was left behind. And I almost think that like we didn't need Day. Like I don't know if June would come to where she was as a revolutionist or whatever without Day and her experiences. The plot was bad. I didn't tell you, but the first book is about Day being accused of killing June's older brother, which is the only family member she has left behind. And then they tell June, okay, you're graduating high school right now, go find him. And she's like, yeah, I got this, don't worry about it. Nonsense, but okay. The world building was shitty. It's supposed to be like a cyberpunk type of aesthetic, so I'm imagining like Blade Runner and Judge Dredd, but they always describe everything as dusty. Day gets a metal knee, and it's like robotic, and I was like, where the fuck did that come from? You can do that here? The background characters, who were they? The climax of the book, bad. Their romance, okay, and they mention how Day lost his virginity at 12 to like a 16-year-old girl. Why is stuff like, why do you feel like you have to mention that? Because that's disgusting. I hated this series, and I don't think anyone should read it. Simple as that. Next, I read Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking. This sort of follows the year after her husband's death. I thought it was okay. I listened to the audiobook, and truth being told, I think I fell asleep. I'm pretty sure I actually fell asleep for like at least 40% of the book. I was just very tired. I'm sorry. I don't think I found it particularly boring. I think I enjoyed it, but I did fall asleep, I'm pretty sure. Would have enjoyed this much more as a physical book than I would have as an audiobook. So if I ever see it secondhand, I'm gonna pick it up so I can actually like properly read it. But otherwise, yeah, I thought it was okay. It was an okay introduction to Joan Didion. I guess I can see the hype, but I'm not like particularly blown away. I read Mom by Emilia Clarke. So this is the beginning of a new comic book series by the wonderful, stunning actress. It's about this single mom in like her mid to late 20s, and she has superpowers. And the way the plot, like the direction of the plot is really interesting because this first volume focuses a lot on her background and like who she is as a person versus her being a superhero, and the steps and like her conscious and how she like develops her morale and how she actually like physically like fights crime. We just see like a picture of her like defeating bank thieves or something. Mostly her background and how she decides from being like an ordinary mom with superpowers to being like, yeah, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna be a superhero because I can. Background we get is that her parents were scientists and they suddenly pass away when she's around 12 or 13 years old, and so she goes to the basement and she's like, fuck it, my parents are dead. What good is it gonna do for me to keep going? Like, I should just drink a bunch of shit. She drinks stuff from a fuck ton of tubes, and each tube like gives her a different superpower, and that is that. First volume like plants a seed of like who our main villain could be. Otherwise, it was okay. I'm gonna try and continue on with the series. I'd like to see what type of arc it takes and see if it continues the pacing that it had in this volume, which I really wasn't a fan of. I think like visually it's super pretty. Like this cover is gorgeous, and Barnes & Noble's did an exclusive version that it's like all red and she has her suit on. It's so pretty. Why does that look like that? That's so gorgeous. It's a start. Like when it comes to first books, I'm much more lenient. It's a start. I'm interested to see where it goes. I read Junji Ito's Deserter collection of stories. I read everything by Junji Ito. I'm a bit of a connoisseur, I guess. Well, I've read everything that's been translated to English, excuse me. And yeah, after reading all that, I can like truly say that there are a lot of plots that share the same. A lot of, you know, his stories sort of take place in the same town with the same characters, but that being said, there's a lot of similarities when you like binge his manga. You'll see that it's just a lot of the same stuff. Anyways, that being said, this felt very refreshing. Really can't even tell you like about any of the story. Why am I mentioning this one? I don't know, but I think if you've never read Junji Ito, that this is a really, really, really great place to start. I think this is honestly one of his best short story collections that we've gotten from him. It was super refreshing, I feel like. I read The Night Country, which is a YA fantasy by Melissa Albert. It's a sequel to The Hazelwood. The Hazelwood I read because of The House of Hollow, which is one of my favorite YA books of all time. I forgot to put it in my like 2021 Best Books of the Year video, which I'm devastated about, but I put it in my description. Crystal Sutherland, you should write like new young adult, or take that book and turn it into like a full adult fantasy. Like, oh, anyways, I wanted more of that, and so I picked up The Hazelwood. It's about this girl who's always been on the run with her mom because they just seem to have the most wicked luck, and her grandmother is very famous like across the globe because she wrote this stories called The Tales of Hinterland. It's a short story collection, and they're crazy and they literally make people feel some type of way. Anyways, her mom goes missing, and her classmate Finch and her go searching for the Hazelwood. And so that's what the first book is about. It's a YA duology. Can you imagine that they make it to the Hazelwood? Something really traumatic happens to our main character, like nearly escapes it. And in the second book, she's back in our world, and she's trying to like cope with like just being here. Second book, the hinterland and the Hazelwood is not done with her. Yeah, I loved it. It took zero energy, like zero brain energy, and that's not to like insult Melissa Albert. It's just that I was already like aware of this world. I read the Hazelwood back in November. Right at the end of November, so I'd waited a little bit to read the sequel. But yeah, I really love it, and I think we should get a book 3. Like, I would be surprised if we don't eventually in a couple of years see a book 3. Like, this is about fairy tales. Everything is in 3s, so I'm just kind of confused. There could be, if she really wanted, a 3rd book. Don't be cheap, Melissa. Next, I read Girl, Woman, Other. I have a book group at my job called Girl, Woman, Other, just named after this book by Bernadine and Evaristo. It is a story told through the narratives of 12 womanettes who are all black, and they live in Britain, and of all ages. And it sort of surrounds this plot that one of our characters, the first narrative that we hear from, Ama, and she feels like she's just gotten her piece of fame. And so this play is a really big deal. And so a lot of these characters are planning on attending it because each story is told through some type of association, some type of blood relative, some type of friendship of one another. So the first chapter is Ama, and then we get her daughter Yaz, and in the third section of that is Ama's best friend Dominique. So we have Ama, who, you know, is a middle-aged queer woman in a polyamorous relationship, who's just gotten her, what she believes is her big break. Then we have Yaz, who is like, in present day, a sophomore, freshman in college. And we get to see what her modern views are on racism and activism and socialism, and how she identifies herself as a black woman and how she presents it. And how she perceives other white people versus Ama. And then we get this story of Dominique, who falls in love with a woman, and she ends up moving to the U.S. and living in a female-centered community, and ultimately ends in a abusive relationship, and how she breaks free from that. And so all the different stories are sort of connected in that way. Intersectionality to the max. Race, class, gender, mental health, mother-daughter relationships. Like, this literally discusses everything possible. I thought this was so incredible. I think to annotate this would be impossible because there's so much to highlight and so much to think about literally in every page. It's so incredible. It has no periods so that readers can read it at their own pace. Love that. I saw an interview with Bernadine Evaristo, and the guy asked her, like, oh, are you like sort of humble? Are you like shy to say that you've won the Booker Prize for this book? And she was like, no, I boast about it. I want people to know about it. She's like, I think we should rephrase it. She said something along the lines of like, Maya Angelou? Is it Maya Angelou? Who won the first Booker Prize? And she was like, but that's not it. The only black woman to have won the Booker Prize, and that was over 25 years ago. No, not the Booker Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. Bernadine Evaristo was like, I'm the first and only black woman to have won the Booker Prize. And an extended branch of that conversation that she didn't add was that she had to share that Booker Prize with Margaret Atwood, who one is probably a millionaire because of, you know, The Handmaid's Tale and plus all the other million books she's written. Not to mention Margaret Atwood has already won the Booker Prize before. Plus Margaret Atwood is a white old woman. So moving on, something brilliant that I did read. Angels in America by Tony Kushner. This is by far one of the best pieces of literature I have ever read in my entire life. It's set in the Reagan presidency during the HIV crisis, and there's this general setting of like, the world is coming to the end. We've reached our climax. Intellectually, we cannot go any further. Technology stops here. There's this overall sense of dread in the United States that it's just so helpless, and it's written all over the play. You can just feel it. It's this weight. And so you follow this cast of like 6 characters, I believe, and it just sort of goes through all of their interactions, and it deals with a lot of the characters like internalized homophobia, internalized misogyny, again with like girl, woman, other, like race, class, gender, all the above, sexuality, like all the above. Within the plot is this fantastical element of this being talking to one of our characters, and it talks to him and it gives him signs of what it is. It's called Angels in America. Most people who are aware of the play know that the being is referring to the title Angels in America, and what really makes it amazing is that it's not what the being is, it's the role that it plays and why it comes to communicate to this character. Absolutely stunning, gorgeous, phenomenal. I once read that on a Goodreads review that Angels in America is a play that has to be experienced and not read, because on paper it is good, but actually seeing it and hearing it for yourself is a whole different experience. If you read this, and please do, listen to the audiobook on Libby because it's read It's done by the 2018 revival cast, and Andrew Garfield stars in it. He plays the person who the being is being spoken to, and that man puts his whole fucking pussy into it. He started in theater, and people who start in theater are... Last book I'm going to talk about is Book of Night by Holly Black. I read the arc. I thought this was terrible. I did a reading vlog on it. It wasn't really great. I don't know if it'll actually ever be published. But I thought this was atrocious. I think the reception we got for Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which was her first adult fantasy novel, is the same thing we're going to see for Book of Night. This is basically about, like, in our modern world where we discover that shadows have magic. And you have to experience serious trauma, like emotional as well as physical, so maybe a trigger warning for that. That might be a really sensitive topic for some people. So you have to experience trauma, deep-rooted trauma to like trigger your shadow. And basically in this book we have our main character who was like a thief for a really long time, and she's instructed to find this person or whatever, but then at the same time this person who's instructed her to find this person or this book or object, you see, I don't even remember anymore, that's how much I hated it, is also someone that she like hates and despises, but her life is being threatened. I hate it. I thought it was absolutely terrible. The book doesn't start until the second half, which is not something that bothers me, but considering the fact that none of the characters were quite likable, sort of devastating to me, honestly. The magic in it did not seem plausible whatsoever. Like, you would think it being literally our shadows, like building... Luna, please! You would think that it being our shadows, it'd be something, like, believable, because it's something we can see for ourselves right in front of us, right? And no, like, the very small structure of magic that we get makes no sense. We get the word Book of Magic, I think, like, once. Or is it Book of Night? There isn't even a Book of Night. It's like a Book of Light, not even a Book of Night. The main character's little sister, if you had told me that she was 12 or even 8, I would have said, yeah, that makes sense. When they said she was 23, I was like, oh. Even the ending was flat. I genuinely don't think people are gonna like this at all, which makes me sad because I think the cover's super pretty. I feel like now I'm obligated to put that reading vlog up because I really go off in it, and I wish I had my full thoughts here, but I don't. That being said, I can tell you what I'm reading right now, which is The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. I love this. February was also another really random reading month for me, but it's fine. Like, I'm going through it right now. I'm really going through it. I'll catch you later. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope the sun is shining.